I would like to say a little something about language. More precisely, I would like to consider the question of the nature of the relationship between language and reality. As we all know, language is our primary means for communicating information about what is happening in the world around us. When we engage in linguistic discourse, we intend to say something significant about the world outside of language, the world that we encounter and experience. But how is this possible? What is it about language that gives it this remarkable capacity for affording us with the means for depicting in an intelligible fashion a reality that is, in and of itself, utterly non-linguistic? Now, a customary response to this would be to merely point out the fact that language is a semantic phenomenon, that we ascribe meanings to our linguistic expression. But what is it for a linguistic expression to possess meaning? After all, on a prima facie construal, linguistic expressions are mere verbally emitted sounds, or perhaps marks inscribed on a page. What is it for such things to possess meaning? What is it for such things to convey information concerning conditions that may or may not obtain in the world? Meaning is, of course, a pervasive phenomenon. It far outstrips its manifestation in language. We find meaning in everything we experience. It is by virtue of meaning that we endow the incessant and chaotic flux of sensory impressions that impinge upon our consciousness with order and coherence. Experience is not merely an event in consciousness, but has a specifiable cognitive failure. It is this cognitive element that is characterized by philosophers following Franz Brentano as the intentional content of the experience. It is, in other words, the meaning of the experience. Early in the 20th century, in the preceding century, philosophy underwent a radical development, customarily known as the linguistic turn. Generally, the linguistic turn is considered to be a philosophical revolution on a par with the Cartesian and Kantian revolution. What it entailed was a radically distinctive approach to the traditional problems of philosophy, most predominantly the problems of ontology, or questions concerning the ultimate nature of reality. Essentially, the traditional problems of ontology, problems concerned with a reality reputed to exist outside of our minds and independent of our knowledge, were considered by those who embraced the linguistic turn to be at bottom problems about language, about the meanings of our linguistic expressions. Those expressions we employ to formulate propositions and to make statements about this supposed extra-linguistic reality. Propositions traditionally construed as propositions of ontology were, upon analysis, revealed to be metalinguistic in character. The upshot being that the only reality that we can meaningfully be said to possess knowledge of is that reality capable of being represented in language. Wittgenstein cryptically put the point by saying that the limits of my language are the limits of my world. How do we get outside of language? How do we transcend the linguistically constituted domain of sense? Since Plato, philosophers had operated on the assumption that language is essentially a transparent medium. that through its meanings we could divine the fundamental ontological constitution of the world. For those philosophers who came in the wake of the linguistic turn, language is opaque and without any essential connection to any extra-linguistic reality. We are hopelessly constrained in our knowledge to the representations of language and have no access to any genuinely objective order of existence. Then perhaps we should turn inwards to the interior content of our minds to discover the locus of linguistic meaning. Perhaps the meanings we ascribe to our linguistic expressions are parasitic on those intentionally constituted contents of our mental states and conscious experiences. This was the path pursued by Husserl and the phenomenologists. By laying bare the eminent contents of consciousness, Husserl believed that he had disclosed the transcendental space of meaning. Meaning was, on his view, the intentional achievement of the transcendental ego, or absolute subject. Husserl's position is not to be conflated with psychologism. His transcendental subject is not the ego of empirical psychology, nor are meanings to be construed as mere subjective psychological phenomena. The interior of consciousness is a genuinely transcendental sphere, and meanings are real essences. Although Husserl followed Kant in his transcendental turn, he did not thereby constrain human knowledge to a realm of phenomenal appearances. For Kant, the ego that stands behind consciousness is a mere formal condition for the transcendental unity of experience. For Husserl, by contrast, the transcendental subject is a metaphysical plenum, the ultimate source and origin of all meaning and all being. For Husserl, the world that confronts us in consciousness and is the object of our linguistic discourses is ultimately the constitutive achievement of absolute mind or spirit. Husserl's transcendental idealism offers us, in my own estimation, a genuine alternative to that semantic nihilism that is the destination at the end of the road that leads from the linguistic turn.